Welcome everyone to another exciting episode of Coach Ben's Case by Case. Today's case, saving your spouse from obesity. Let's go ahead and get right into it, shall we? I have a feeling this is going to be an intense case already. Obesity is a huge topic now more than ever, although it seems like we're always saying that with every passing year, but it is a very large problem. No pun intended. Let's go ahead and get right into it. My wife, she's 34, he's 36, is spiraling, and I am tired of covering for her. I need her to get her weight under control. But we've been down this road before, and it always eventually falls apart. How can I help her see I'm serious and salvage this? Before I get started, I want to make one thing clear. I love my wife. She's the mother of my 2 children. She's intelligent and funny. And I have always been and remain attracted to her. She's always been heavier since we first met. And I've never had a problem with that, except insofar as it affects our family's quality of life, as I'll explain below. Okay, wow. So we've seen a little bit of signs of love on the husband's part. That's good. They got 2 children. Let's see just how much he wants to salvage, as he said, his marriage. Because it could be a recipe for divorce. Because there's only so much a spouse can put up with. It's a test of love. It's a true test of love. But we'll talk about that later. They have 2 children and he's serious and he wants to salvage his marriage. Let's go ahead and see how intense this particular case is. For some background, we have been married for 9 years. Wow. Congratulations. And she has steadily gained weight over the course of our marriage. Okay, so that's unfortunate. This was particularly exacerbated by a difficult pregnancy and her losing her long-term job. Things continued to get out of hand until earlier last year, when some incidents finally convinced her to see a doctor and get control of things. All right, so it looks like she's going through a lot. She's been through a lot. That's mental and emotional pain right there. So it's taking a toll on her physical health as the pounds accumulate. Her weight was well over 500 pounds. All right, so we're definitely into the morbid obese category. Morbidly obese. This is life-threatening, okay? So he's right to take this seriously. And I'm glad he said he wants to try to salvage his marriage, because she's going to need all the help that she can get, mentally and emotionally, and maybe with physical training, exercise, yada yada. Everybody knows the drill. However, not everybody really does know the drill, because obesity can creep up on almost anybody, especially these days, with a lot of different reasons, which we won't really get into because that would take hours to cover. And her doctor prescribed her Zepbound and recommended she start seeing a therapist. This worked fairly well for a while, though she almost immediately quit therapy. Okay, so obviously it's not always going to go as planned. It sounds good on paper, but once you start trying to change that lifestyle, that comfort zone, that's where the real challenge comes in. When you go home after seeing a doctor or a therapist, they can only recommend and prescribe different things, but ultimately, the person who's struggling with obesity or being severely overweight has to change their lifestyle. And that is the reason why there's such an obesity epidemic. There continues to be one, because it's been going on for quite a while now, for decades. Ever increasing, and it's not stopping. And by the end of last summer, she had lost over 20 pounds. Okay, so a little bit of progress, right? It's really difficult. It's not easy. She's going to have her struggles, and that's when her spouse has to come in. She had also generally improved her outlook, gotten a part-time job, and was much more active. Okay. We loved taking walks together. Okay, so that's past tense. Loved. Doesn't sound like they're walking together anymore. That's a good fit. That's a good idea. It's a great idea. Just be more active. Don't exaggerate, because it's going to be difficult in the beginning. I imagine at 500 pounds, she could barely stand or walk. It's no joke. So her spouse is going to have to have a ton of patience, which we'll get into in a little bit. But let's go ahead and proceed to see how grave of a situation, once again, no pun intended, let's see how grave of a situation this really is. Things took a turn for the worse in two ways last fall. First, my job switched insurance plans to one that didn't cover GLP-1s for weight loss. And second, a family member passed away pretty suddenly. Wow. Which caused her a lot of grief and stress. She was home for work for about a month on bereavement after the passing. And at the same time, her binge eating. All right, so she's mentally and emotionally out of control at this point, going through a lot of grieving, frustrations, I get it, which had been suppressed by Zepbound, returned with a fury. Okay, well, the binge eating. So she's eating emotionally. She has a problem with her relationship with food. Emotional eating. It's actually more common than what people think. Yes, it can be overcome, but we'll talk about that later. This bled into the holidays, which are obviously not good for anyone's waistline. And this year, she's basically fallen back into all of her old habits. See, it's a lifestyle change. It's very challenging, isn't it? For her to change her lifestyle when she's emotionally binge eating, it's going to be very challenging for her to overcome. It just makes it a bad situation worse when the mind and the emotions, because that's the only tools for the fight against obesity that she has. She's losing the physical battle. That's when the mind and her spirit, her emotions have to come in. They have to come in to save the day. Without that willpower, it's not going to happen. And then that's when the spouse has to come in to motivate her mentally and emotionally. And let's see how much her spouse is actually trying. I know he's frustrated. He's got to be frustrated. That's a tough challenge, 500 pounds. I mean, maybe at 300 pounds, but for a woman, it's even more difficult. Usually men can still kind of sort of function at a better, it just depends on their level of physical fitness, but for a woman, it's especially tough, I would say, because usually men have more upper body strength to carry around such weight. But it's debatable. But for the most part, yeah, it is sad when you see a woman, I mean, for a man as well, go up to 500. That's just unbelievable. But sadly, it happens. But let's go ahead and see what goes on here. So they're into the holidays, and it's getting worse. I don't know her current weight, but she's definitely gained back everything she lost plus some. So that's the 20 pounds that she initially lost and more. And so this type of yo-yo effect is typical if there's no consistency in the weight loss plan. It's persistent consistency. If it's not there, and she has to do activities that she loves, but if it's not there, then yes, there is a danger of regaining the weight and then some. The hormones are out of balance. The metabolic response is not there. It's trying to get the ball rolling. That's what fat loss and weight loss are all about. It's the hardest part is getting the ball rolling. But the good news is once you get that ball rolling with consistency, because you're being persistent, then it becomes easier and the pounds start to come off, the fat starts to strip away. But it's got to be done with lots of care and lots of support, especially if she can't do it on her own in this case. Here's where the advice portion starts. Okay. I've had to start adjusting my life in a lot of ways to accommodate her limitations. Okay, that's nice. See, that's what a spouse should do. And the list grows longer every week. While by no means exhaustive, the list includes... he's being very thoughtful here. He's acting like a gentleman. Let's see if he continues being a gentleman about this situation, because it is a nightmare situation for him, I imagine. And for her. She is unable to put on socks or shoes or trim her toenails on her own. Okay. Of course, okay. That's so... That's just sad to read right there. I mean, just being unable. I mean, it's one thing to struggle to put your socks on or try to trim it, There's even fit people who have trouble trimming their toenails. It's a flexibility issue, but for her, it's pretty much out of the picture. She's going to need some assistance. Always needs my help getting up from our sofa, which is pretty low, or from playing with the kids on the floor. Yeah, well, playing with kids takes a lot of energy, even for thin and fit people, okay? She's just not going to have the energy to do so. I hope he's understanding of that. It sounds like he is, but let's just see how understanding he is. Because like I said before, he's going to have to be the key to all of this, to motivate her mentally and emotionally. And then she's going to have to drive on from there, from the progress that should make her happy to see. And to conquer her addiction with food, with that emotional binge eating. I have to drive her to work and the kids to school despite working from home myself, because she is too big to safely fit behind the wheel. Right. So obesity is sort of a handicap. It's a legit handicap. And that's not an exaggeration. You are going to have physical limitations. Both men and women who are struggling with being severely overweight or obese. It all depends on your physical flexibility and your stamina overall. Because you're carrying literally hundreds of pounds extra that anybody who is fit or skinnier is going to say, well, what's wrong with you? What do you mean, what's wrong with them? Imagine putting on hundreds of pounds, like maybe a 200-pound vest on your back. See how you feel after a few hours. I mean, you have to... The level of empathy has to be like off the charts at this type of level of obesity. Morbidly obese. But her life is on the line. So as the title of this says, Saving Your Spouse from Obesity, I chose that title because you have a choice. How much do you love your spouse? Are you going to be their hero? You're going to have to put on that cape because they're unable to put it on. They have issues. And this is as bad as it gets. Because if she didn't have that emotional binge eating problem, which is a mental and emotional problem, many would even say it's a disorder. If she didn't have that, then this task of physical training would be much easier. She would have kept those 20 pounds off and kept going because she's mentally and emotionally strong. However, this is as bad as it gets. Now, how do you play the role of hero as a spouse? It's just going to be a tough job. It's going to be a tough job. It's not like Superman helping a blind lady cross a street. This is going to be Superman battling all different types of intergalactic villains. It's actually unfair for the spouse because it's such an extreme situation, but it's a test of how deep is his love. Are you going to be able to get through this? Can you get through to the mind of your spouse struggling with this problem? Because it's all three. It's the 3 times as worse because you're it's mentally and emotionally and physically tough for her. So let's continue down the list because I imagine this must be quite a hell for him to go through. Having to help with, it's like he's literally doing everything because she's pretty much, as I said before, handicapped at this point. It's not an offense, it's the truth. She's unable to do many things. I have to drive her to work and kids to school. Right. Okay. because she can't fit behind the wheel. When friends invite us out, I have to make excuses to cancel plans and to lie to them to avoid admitting things like, no, we can't come because she can't stand up for that long. Or our social life is in the tank. Okay, so it's in the garbage, right? Okay, so I understand his grievances. But like I said, how deep is his love? Let's find out, shall we? Our romantic life sucks. All right, so he's clearly frustrated. Understandable, because sex at this point is pretty much out of the picture. Unless you're talking about oral sex. But other than that, or masturbation, obviously. But without going into further details, yes, there are options, but ultimately, it's not healthy, right? Because everything on the table is sex, your romantic life, it should be on the table, right? It should be on the plate. All the options, ideally. But you have to work with what you have. So if they can still get some pleasure from each other, as love should be, yes, there are options. But at this point, I understand the struggle because the mood isn't there. Because she doesn't feel confident. She doesn't feel beautiful, perhaps. Or maybe she does. But at this rate, she's going to run herself into the grave. Hence the reason why I said grave danger in the beginning. Basically, all dates are staying in to get takeout. Yeah, it's centered around food, isn't it? She has to eat, by the way. She can't just stop eating. That's a bad move. That's going to mess up her hormones, her metabolism, her thyroid gland. That's going to mess up her stomach. When somebody's obese, you don't stop eating. You should start eating the right foods. In the beginning, especially 500 pounds, you shouldn't have to worry about quantity of food. Once you eat nutritionally, a nutritious diet, she can't overeat anymore. But that control and discipline must be there. And if it's not there in the beginning, it must quickly develop. Otherwise, it's game over and she finds herself in a vicious loop, a vicious cycle of that binge eating. Because there's no progress. It's a lifestyle change that must happen over time. This will take time, but the right steps, even if they're baby steps or half baby steps, they need to be taken. Like I said, get that ball rolling. And watch a movie. Okay, so Netflix and chill, right? Because she gets anxious about restaurants. Right, because she has an addiction to food. Can't fit in the movie theaters and can't do most things that involve physical activity. Well, you said most things, but keep in mind you did begin by saying that she lost 20 pounds by walking with you. Take that and run with it. No pun intended, but keep going. Why did you guys stop? And even if she does regress and gains the 20 pounds and then some, get back at it again. Because it's more than just a physical activity. She has to train her mind and her emotions, the right mindset, and the right willpower. That level of willpower has to be there. Even if it's a small percentage, it has to be there because right now it's not there. You guys are avoiding all these activities. She's in the handicap phase. Like I said, half a baby step is still a step. You have to help her take it and keep taking more after that. Don't be too pushy because she's going to want to regress. When things get difficult, many people run away. They cower away. It's weakness. Mental and emotional weakness. Because it's there to comfort her physical inabilities and weakness. Most weekdays, when she isn't working, she barely leaves bed. Yeah, so she's probably depressed. That's what I'm getting from this. She lacks that willpower, as I said. Leaving me to work full-time and do all of the childcare. So that's pretty exhausting. I mean, 2 kids. Yeah. He's going to have to pull all the slack. And that's not very sustainable. But if he truly loves her, he's going to have to substitute and just play the hero, both roles. Because she's in a handicapped position, she's going to have to... Any progress that she makes, then she could try to help out here and there. Because that's actually good exercise for her. Even doing a few squats a day at her weight, whatever squatting angle she can do, any progress is good progress. But she has to make progress. And then little by little, I know it's going to require a ton of patience, she'll be able to help you more. And maybe fit behind that wheel to go do errands and whatnot. The sooner the better, right? But don't expect miracles overnight, because especially at 500 pounds, the good news is the more obese a person is, the quicker the pounds will come off initially. Until you get to not necessarily a decent weight to be able to do things at that weight, but at least a closer to decent weight. The closer the better. And then she'll start enjoying the new flexibility she has, the new stamina she's getting. Because even though it's small, it's still significant, the progress. Okay, so same time once they're home from school with the childcare. Grocery shopping is a nightmare because she can't really stay standing for long enough. Yeah, what do you expect? But is too proud to use one of the store scooters. Alright, so too proud. I can understand why. Because it's pretty humiliating, but it's there for a reason. It's not just for obese people. It's for people who have maybe severe arthritis, such as knee pain, ankle pain, hip pain, whatever it is. Or maybe another issue to where they can't stand for a prolonged period of times or walk. Maybe they had a recent injury. The scooter's not just there as what many people assume it is for overweight people or obese people. It's there as a courtesy, because such as Walmart, stores like that, they want you to shop there, right? They want everybody all inclusive, but it's not to promote saying, oh, you're obese, just use one of our carts and keep getting more obese. No, that's not the message. It's there to assist you. And hopefully when you go home, and hopefully the food that you buy is healthy, but when you go home, you're doing the right thing. You're eating the right food, you're doing your exercise, but that's not the store's responsibility, okay? Just keep that in mind, because a lot of people, they talk bad about the people who use the scooters, as he says here. So she stays in the car and calls me on my AirPods and tells me what to get, okay? Well, it depends what she's telling you to get, right? Because she has that addiction. And if I refuse her anything, suddenly I'm being manipulative or insulting. Okay, so she's upset. Insulting her weight, he says. She's not really upset. She's frustrated, in other words, which can cause her to become upset. Because of her addiction. It could be addiction to drugs, for example, for another case. Of course, she has to detox. She has to change that lifestyle slowly. In that case, go ahead and give her a little bit of what she wants, but tell her she can't have all of what she wants. Tell her she has to make some decisions, but it's hard to play therapist. She should be seeing a therapist at that level. Somebody. Because a personal trainer is not going to be enough. Not at this phase. She's not really ready for that. I think just basic walking and attacking her mental and emotional issues with a loving spouse, a hard-working, loving spouse at this level, that should suffice. All right, so let's get back to the scooter. Calling him on the AirPods. If he refuses her anything, suddenly he's being manipulative or insulting about her weight. Okay. Well, that's the struggle, isn't it? It's gonna happen. The whole thing makes me feel like a drug dealer or something. Well, there it is about the drugs. Yes. There's the comparison. Yeah, I feel bad for him, but strength, right? Let's go ahead and see how this concludes. All right, we got a lot more information for this conclusion. Every week on Sunday, she basically hypes herself up about how this will be the week to turn everything around. Okay, so she is trying to build up that willpower and that positive, strong mindset required for her to start making progress. Okay, so you have to nurture and continue to feed that fight from within her. This is the warrior phase. She knows she has a morbid problem on her hands. So, yes, even if she fails a week here, a week there, just keep it going. Now, granted, if it continues to last for too long, how long is too long? I don't know, half a year? Because there's got to be some progress, as I said before, even half a baby step. Baby steps, even half of it, it still counts. So she wants to turn everything around, but then she never changes anything. Okay, so what's happening here is her mind is saying yes, but her body's saying no. That's when you have to come in and hold her hand. You have to literally walk her through the positive lifestyle changes. She's telling you she can't do it alone. It's great that she's motivated, but it's not enough. And even if she did seek therapy, maybe it's still not enough. It sounds like she loves you. She's just highly frustrated. And it sounds like you love her. And you're highly frustrated. This is a real test of love right here. And it doesn't mean that you're in a failing relationship. This is not a failing relationship. This is just a moment of crisis. This is an emergency situation in your relationship. You guys have been together for 9 years. You have 2 kids. You guys obviously love each other. She's just going through a crisis and she needs your help desperately. And if I remind her of what she said and tried to curb, no, don't remind her. Just try again, right? You know, they say that insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. Well, I disagree in this case. She needs to try over and over again. Of course, she needs to try harder or smarter. But her life literally depends on trying over and over again. So it's not insane to keep trying. It's a necessity. Her life literally depends on it at this level. And it sounds like she's serious, but just not that serious, right? It's difficult for her. She's in a lot of fear and pain. So the last thing you need is to make a bad situation worse by giving up on her, right? I know you're frustrated, but you gotta hang in there. You're not obligated to, by any means, but if you really love her, with all of your heart and soul, you will hang in there. That's a warrior mentality. That's a soulmate level mentality. And a heart of a soulmate. And try to curb her eating choices. I'm not being helpful. Okay. You're trying to be helpful. Obviously, that's false, right? And you do have to try to curb her eating choices. Just don't be so drastic. You have to go tapering off little by little. Okay, honey, you want a donut? Here's a donut. I know that sounds bad, but imagine her. She's literally addicted. She wants a dozen donuts. Well, don't give her a dozen. Don't give her half a dozen. Say, honey, you can have two donuts this week, but next week you got to go down to 1. You give me something and I'll satisfy your craving for something, right? Because we have to taper her off. Doing it cold turkey is not going to work. Because he's not in this situation. He doesn't know how it feels. Of course she's going to say things that she doesn't mean. But you gotta be understanding. You can't just do... It's just like somebody who has an addiction to smoking or drinking. It's not going to happen cold turkey. And it's not going to happen overnight. So for the person who likes to smoke a pack a day, okay, half a pack a day. Heck, you gotta take something. Any type of progress. And then the next week... All right, so 1/4 of a pack. You get where I'm going with this. Taper it off. Be smart. It's not that you're not being helpful. You just have to be understanding, right? I'm honestly getting really sick of all this. Okay, so he's really upset. That's unfortunate, but it's understandable. I understand. And feel close to snapping. Well, don't snap on her. I mean, if you really love her. I know it's frustrating, but... My goodness. How deep is your love? That's all I can say. To top everything off, my job was partially funded by federal grant money, so as of 2 weeks ago, I'm unemployed and looking for work. Well, that's unfortunate. Adding more fuel to the fire, I suppose. A series of unfortunate events, what can I say? I can't handle everything that I'm being asked to do. Of course not. Nobody's demanding that you do it. It's just that's the only option for the moment. Unless you hire help, maybe hire a nanny, somebody to help her around the house. I mean, but if you can't afford it, then there is no other choice other than friends and family to come in to lend a helping hand. But it is going to be humiliating and frustrating on her end and your end. It's a question of pride at that point. But if you're really proudly in love with her, then you're going to have to play the hero, like I said in the beginning, Superman. You have to be her Superman and teach her how to be Wonder Woman. Make it a reality. That I'm being asked to do, and the stress is killing me. Yes, stress does kill. It's highly concerning. In some ways, stress is just as morbid obesity, because people have all different types of heart problems, body circulation. It is dire. Extreme stress. But don't make a bad situation worse, right? You got to fight this. Both of you are going to have to fight because you guys are in a relationship. Killing me to the point I frequently fantasize about running away. Don't feel bad about that. Don't feel bad about that. It happens to a lot of people. I imagine your intentions are good. You're just frustrated. So don't expect too much out of yourself in this situation. If anybody out there is helping their spouse or their partner trying to get over an addiction, it's okay to be frustrated. It's okay to have feelings of wanting to break up or divorce or run away. I wouldn't hold anything against you for doing so. Because it's a question of how much can you... It's not how much you can take. It's how much can you handle given the situation presented. How deep is your love? Just booking a plane ticket and leaving her to deal with things for a weekend, but you know she can't deal with it. And you're also abandoning your kids. No, I mean, think about it, but don't do it, right? I would never actually do that. Good. You just read my mind. I'm proud of that. But it makes me feel like a terrible husband. No, you're not. You're not. And father to even have those thoughts. No, that's perfectly fine. There's even people who think about cheating on their spouse because their sex life isn't going as expected. But there's a huge, enormous difference, a world of a difference between crossing that line and thinking about that line. A lot of people do this. If they have a test coming up, what if I just skip the test and just fail? Don't even go through the stress. There's so many different scenarios. Why even try? I know I'm going to fail, yada, yada. Nobody's guilty for thinking some bad thoughts. We're humans, right? But there's a huge difference between crossing that line and not crossing that line. I feel like I'm living in a loop of broken promises and plans every week, and I don't know how to get it to stick. Well, little by little, right? Obviously, I will be heavily considering the health insurance plan for wherever I look into working next, as GLP-1s have been the only thing to really help so far. Okay, well, any assistance, right? How can I show her how much I'm hurting without looking shallow or selfish? Strategy. You got to have a plan that sticks to her, that works for both of you and the kids. How can I get one of her diet attempts to stick while we wait for another opportunity to get on drugs? Well, I would say ditch the drugs, because those drugs could be messing with her mind and her emotions. Think about it. Because all those drugs are trying to do is to suppress something that's naturally occurring, although it's unnatural, her addiction, but it's still, it's a natural sensation of hunger, but it's false hunger. She's addicted to taste. Her body doesn't need all that extra energy, but she's depressed, she's anxious, she's nervous. It's a laundry list of negative emotions that pollute her mind, that defeat her willpower. Every time her willpower climbs up the ladder, that embarrassment, all those negative emotions, that frustration knocks it straight down the ladder. And so the Mr. Willpower falls 10 stories back down to square one, trying to climb the ladder again. So yes, in order for a plan to stick, you guys are going to have to talk it out before anything physical. Go back on those walks. That was working. You have to let her know that, hey, look, honey, you might not like walking, but it worked last time. Just because you failed at it, not really failed, you just didn't succeed. Let's get back at it again. Because you never truly fail unless you truly give up. Once you give up, that's when you ultimately failed. But if your attempt didn't work, then attempt it again. That's what's going to stick. Consistency, as I said in the beginning. Persistent consistency. And it's got to come from both of you. You have to be her motivation. Because she's going to be your motivation in another situation. That's the way couples work. You guys have to motivate each other. And there's a lot going on in a couple, in a relationship. You have to motivate yourself. She has to motivate herself. You have to motivate each other. So she has to motivate you. You have to motivate her. Sorry to be so precise, but many people forgot, that this is a team here. Many people just forget. They forgot what being in a relationship is all about. It's teamwork. Your satisfaction is my satisfaction. Your happiness is my happiness, and vice versa. It always works both ways. So today it's her that needs your help. Tomorrow it might be you. Not necessarily with obesity. You're not going to gain hundreds of pounds overnight. I get it. But maybe that could happen to you one day. Or maybe it's something totally different that suddenly happens to you. Now you need her support. Even if it's just mental and emotional support. Our loved ones are everything in this life. And even your children could come into play. Maybe they can support you. Maybe your children need both of your support. So running away is not the answer. But yes, the insane thing it would be to try the same strategy over and over without trying a different strategy. That's why you said how to get it to stick. Keep modifying and editing your strategy. Or go seek the advice of an expert in this field. Go do research. Invest your time and energy into finding a better strategy or developing one of your own. You have to be smart. This is where your mental and emotional strength come into the picture to help her lack of mental and emotional strength. Her weakness. It's for the whole world to see right now. All right. So, how can I show her how much I'm hurting without looking shallow or selfish? Well, you're not selfish, right? Get one of the okay. Whether with or without the drugs, I recommend without the drugs, right? For the foreseeable future, I'm going to have to keep doing extra because she can't physically help right now with a lot of things. Yeah, you did mention that in the beginning. But I need a plan and an end in sight or I'm gonna go nuts. Well, don't go nuts. And actually, nuts are part of a healthy diet. And usually with obese people, they're a best friend. You can't eat too much of them. But they could help because it's a healthier choice. Of course, avoid sugary ones. The enemy is pretty much, we're not going to get into detail with this. Sugar cravings, high sodium cravings, so fried food, sugary foods. The fat is okay, but not hydrogenated or any process. You get the deal. Chemicals, carcinogens, all that. All those chemicals are going to affect her mind and her emotions just like the drugs, right? I'm not a doctor. I can't talk about that drug that she's on, but what I can say is that I prefer a more holistic approach in this situation. Especially at 500 pounds, you got to give her a break, but you can't give her too many breaks. She has to. Her life depends on it. Anything could happen with her health at this point that's not healthy. It's very concerning. At maybe 300 pounds or 400 pounds, that's that's a lot better than 500. I don't know how somebody gets up to 500. 400, I've seen that happen. But It depends. How fit were they to begin with? Have they been going to the gym way before? Do they have that muscle memory? Because it's worse if she never even stepped foot in the gym her whole life. It's worse because now she has to develop muscles that were never there. She has to develop stamina that wasn't ever trained. But regardless, whether a person was fit and then now obese or morbidly obese, regardless, it's going to be a tough journey. It'll be an easier one for those who have set foot in the gym before and have eaten nutritionally. But once again, it's a tough journey. So don't go nuts. Let's go ahead and conclude this case. It's a very tough situation. I will say, though, if your partner finds themselves struggling with the physical issue, no matter what it is, your love for your partner will inevitably be tested. It all comes down to how much you say you love your partner and what you are willing to do to help them solve their problems. It's all or nothing. It doesn't matter how extreme the situation is. Yes, it matters, but it doesn't matter. Because in the end, your partner is going to be looking to you for help, for assistance, for guidance, for the care and love that they expect from you. But you have to expect that when it comes to addictions like this case, or any other addiction, yes, your partner is going to say, most likely, not all the time, but most likely, depending on how extreme the case is, things that they don't mean to say to you, or they don't mean. They're going to say a lot of things, maybe argue with you, take out their frustration on you. Now, don't necessarily be their punching bag. Just be understanding of that fact that they're going through a tough time. Now, if you're cool-headed and you really love your partner, you'll stick through it. You'll find a way that works for both of you, especially for them, so they can get through this tough obstacle. But if you don't really love your partner, yeah, well, I'm thinking about divorce. Okay, it's one thing to think about it, but it's another thing to actually do it. And I hope he doesn't. I hope that she goes back to that walking lifestyle change, loses that 20 pounds again, and if she gains it back, do it again. But this time lose 40. It's a fight. It's a battle of the bulge, right? But it's more than that. It's more than just a physical battle. It's a mental and emotional battle. It's a battle of love, a battle of wits, your willpower, both of your willpowers. So I hope he takes that into consideration. I wish him the best of luck. It's not impossible. She can do this. Little by little, piece by piece, step by step. Take whatever progress you can. And I wish them the best with that said. And with that said, this has been Coach Ben's Case by Case. Much love, everybody.